There happens to be a South Metro family who is celebrating the holiday extra this morning after what happened to them back in the fall. Sarah and Greg had just moved from Indiana to Edina to a condo complex for seniors. They were about to go on a simple bike ride when everything changed. And what happened next can hardly be explained. Doorstep to doorstep, it's just a few hundred feet from home to the gym. A trip Sarah and Greg made regularly, but on this day in October, nothing was regular.
She just said, I'm going to run over the Y, I'll use the weight machines, I'll come back and you get ready. Sarah's very gregarious. She's never met somebody that isn't a friend. So I got ready, changed clothes and got ready for biking and waited and waited and waited, and she didn't come. I wasn't concerned because I typically figured she just met 5 new friends at the Y.
But instead of enjoying herself, his beloved wife was in anguish. Being rushed to HCMC after being hit by a car, a level 1 trauma center. It was a race to stabilize her.
She had some very severe skull fractures and spine fracture as well as being, somewhat hemodynamically unstable. So there's a lot of things that have to go right for them to even arrive safely.
An immediate scan showed her brain was swelling fast. A normal scan should have dark spaces that have fluid. Hers shows it was fully swollen. She didn't have an ID on her, so it was several hours before Greg got the call.
When they said a traumatic brain injury, I knew it was serious. I'm a veterinary pathologist, and although I'm not a real doctor, I know a lot about neuropathology, so it was pretty devastating news.
Greg quickly realized his outgoing wife, a proud mother and grandmother, may never speak again. Sarah was in grave condition.
And that was Sarah's big problem, is that her brain was starting to swell, and her brain was acting much more like a very young person, and had some really malignant swelling after the trauma that progressed over several days.
Her family held vigil, praying they'd be given some amazing grace, but she lay in a coma, completely non-responsive.
Our problem was she hadn't woken up, and we were at 2.5 weeks, and they were recommending prognostically, if she hadn't woken up and she wasn't doing this following commands, that they recommended we take her off the ventilator and just say goodbye. We had reconciled ourselves to her death, and my children had planned her funeral. I asked them to, so that we weren't faced with that afterwards. And we thought that she would be with the Lord, and she'd be in a better place, and it would be over.
As they closed in on the toughest decision they'd ever make, one of their surgeons walked in.
And he went up to her and grabbed her hand and shook it really hard, and then he yelled in her ear, "Sarah," and she opens her eyes, and she turns and looks at him, and he looked at me and says, "Has she been doing this?" And I said, "No." He looked over at me, and he literally started kind of dancing in his clogs, and he goes, "This is amazing. This is almost like a miracle." Well, he goes, says, "I've been doing this for a lot of years." And he says, I just could have never thought this could happen. And then he looked at me and says, "Greg, this changes everything. This changes everything."
And did it ever?
47, 84.
7 months of procedures and therapy later, Sarah is thriving.
44.
Good job.
I feel like it's a miracle that I lived. But I know if I would have died, I would have gone to be with Jesus. I'm thankful I lived, and I get to live longer. But yeah, I'm just very grateful.
Her family, they just felt like it was a miracle. How does that land with you hearing that?
I'm happy to hear, and I would concur. It's really wonderful to see that outcome here. And it represents a lot of hard work on her part as well.
So I'm gonna have you look at this picture. I just want you to memorize all 20 pictures of it.
And Sarah is committed to keep working hard. She's making a comeback, and so is her memory.
We were going to a small Presbyterian church in Ames, where Iowa State is, and it was there that we met.
He had asked me out
I said I needed to go study at the library, and would he like to meet me there?
The truth is we didn't study. We talked the entire time.
And now there are many conversations ahead. Do you feel that, like, okay, I'm supposed to be here?
Absolutely. And when people say, you're a miracle, I say, oh, we have a miracle God, miracle working God, and he has done a miracle through the medical team at this hospital. But I'm not the miracle. God is the miracle and the people that did it.
Now, Sarah keeps making leaps and bounds. She easily passed her test to get her driver's license back. She told me, Susan Elizabeth, the cliche is true. Life can change in an instant. And as you just saw, she is leaning in to gratefulness. We'll be right back.